Hello and how's it going, everyone? It is Skullzi here with the latest Bethesda news, and we have something very exciting to talk about in today's video because another day, another Starfield leak. I feel like we finally are in the right timeline regarding Starfield information after so many years of just like floating around in the empty void of space that is Starfield information. We finally have a lot of stuff to talk about. I don't need to speculate over job postings or LinkedIn profiles anymore, because we've been getting numerous inside statements and now one of the biggest Starfield leaks yet. And I do have some more information regarding that recent Starfield concept art or whatever it is leak, but today I do want to talk about a very recent inside statement that went down over at Reset Era. And yes, we're going to be talking about another one of those insiders again, so no disrespect to these insiders, but somehow it seems like in this last year or so there are like so many more insiders that like it's like a hole opened up and Darkspawn crawled out, and then also some insiders did. But I'm just joking. A lot of these insiders are very credible and have given us very correct information, and on top of that, almost all of them are saying we should hear about Starfield at E3 this year and that the game should come out this year as well. This inside statement is no different. However, this inside statement does lend some more information that we haven't heard before, so I'll break it all down in today's video and give you my take on this and whether or not I think it's legit and what I feel it would mean for Starfield if it was legit. But let's not waste any more time and get to today's information. Like I said, this post comes from Reset Era, from an insider I never heard of, but apparently a lot of people on Reset Era say this insider is very credible and has been correct with a lot of things. And an interesting thing regarding Reset Era, for those that don't know, is they actually make insiders or people who are trying to leak stuff provide evidence to prove that they have access to this information and that they are legit. So whether or not all of them are legit, I'm sure some illegitimate leakers and people like that break through and fake their credentials. Nonetheless, Reset Era does go above and beyond more than other sites in chopping away these fake leaks and stuff like that. So this is something to take in mind. According to Reset Era and the majority of people on Reset Era, this insider is legit and has been correct before, but this insider's name is Point, and first of all, awesome avatar. I love Invincible. I'm glad I'm starting to see some more Invincible stuff out there. If you haven't watched Invincible yet, check it out. It's a great show, but I'm not getting paid enough to advertise for you, Amazon Prime. But here is the thread right here and the actual leak in question, or I guess the inside statement. Are inside statements considered leaks? I mean, technically they're talking about stuff that isn't public or announced yet, so kind of, but I mean, most people when they think of a leak, they think of something else. But either way, this is the post right here, and you can see they're talking about what like their top 5 things that they're excited for are for E3 this year, or just this year in general, and then they go on to update everyone about some more stuff they've heard from their inside sources, or maybe their crystal ball, or maybe their skooma fun times in which their soul leaves their body and they float around to different game development offices and spy on things. But according to their inside sources, they've heard a few interesting things, a lot of which are actually from Bethesda, according to this insider. The screen's gonna get bright. Ah! So first of all, they think a game called Omen will be announced at E3 and will be targeting a 2022 release date. And an interesting thing about this Omen game, which I've never heard about this before, so I don't know what to think about this, but it does sound pretty hype. But according to this same insider, Point, Omen is an arcane game and it's a vampire game directed by Harvey Smith, who is the same director who directed the Dishonored franchise. So that's super hype. I would love to see Arcane's take with a vampire game. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines was one of my favorite underrated RPGs ever, and I'm hyped for the second one, even though there's some issues with the development process and stuff. But according to Point, there is a new Arcane game set in a vampire universe, and it's being directed by Harvey Smith, and that game is going to be announced at E3 this year, I guess. So if we do end up seeing the Omen game this year, I guess that really lends a lot of credibility to Point's inside sources and his statements. They go on to say that, as Jeff Grubb has said, Bethesda and Xbox showcases are being brought closer together, and Point has heard that they might be one and the same now, with Bethesda having a dedicated segment inside the grander Xbox showcase, which I guess makes sense, but at the same time, other insiders have said that the Microsoft showcase would be first, and then the Bethesda showcase would be after that. It would still be part of the Microsoft showcase, but Bethesda would have their own like sub showcase within the Microsoft one after Xbox already shows everything they want to show. So I guess this somewhat doesn't coincide with what insiders have said, unless they've just heard different things, because I could see how this could kind of be considered it's part of the same showcase, but still have its own subcategory. But the last thing is the main thing I want to talk about in today's video. Point says Starfield will definitely be there, which I mean is no surprise according to every other insider in the entire land. But Point also says it sounds like Starfield will be more focused on space exploration rather than being an epic sci-fi saga, which goes against what Todd Howard has said. Todd Howard has said that Starfield is the biggest, most epic science fiction thing you could ever possibly imagine. So if it's just a game focused on space exploration and not really a big space sci-fi epic, that kind of would go against what Todd Howard himself has said in actual freaking interviews about Starfield. So that's something that's kind of confusing in this leak. And they go on to say, think more along the lines of No Man's Sky and Outer Worlds than Mass Effect. It's just Point's take on the little info he was sent, so he could be off base a bit, but we'll find out soon. But to be honest, No Man's Sky and Outer Worlds are two different games. Outer Worlds is kind of like a Fallout game in space on a smaller scale in my opinion, and No Man's Sky is a endless exploration procedural generation game with very little to no story at all. I doubt Starfield is going to have very little to no story at all, considering a lot of leaks we've heard, and considering it might be based on the story of the 10th Planet novel series, which was a cancelled game by Bethesda in the 90s anyway, so they might use that same story or elements from that already established story in Starfield. So the fact that they said it's like No Man's Sky and Outer Worlds to me lends a big red flag about this person, because those games are so different that they shouldn't really be compared unless he's saying it's like a combination of No Man's Sky and Outer Worlds. And in that case, I can see what they're saying. Maybe it is a endless procedural generation space game, but you have a heavy Bethesda RPG element to it. But if that's the case, then I'm kind of worried a bit, because I don't like endless stuff. I mean, No Man's Sky was cool, but just knowing the game is endless for some reason just makes me like almost be less invested, if that makes sense. I know that probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but I like Bethesda making handcrafted specific stuff. Even if it's a large game world, that's fine, but if you start going endless procedural generation stuff, that's when the handcrafted element definitely starts getting culled down a bit, and that's something I don't want to see from Bethesda Game Studios, especially with Starfield, because like I said, their handcrafted worlds and content are what they shine with. It's one of their best assets, so to not utilize that asset by making endless procedural generation stuff like No Man's Sky, according to Point, I mean, that would just kind of suck in my opinion. Even if the game was good, I would still be disappointed. But bear in mind, I know nothing about Point. I guess all of Reset Era says Point is legit, but some of the things they've said in this statement kind of stand out to me as possibly not being true. I mean, the No Man's Sky and the Outer Worlds thing is one thing, because they could have meant it's a combination of the game and not like each one of the games separately or whatever. But the point is, I don't think it's going to be procedurally generated endless stuff. It might be, but I just don't think it is, mostly because I hope it's not. And on top of that, they also said that the Bethesda thing will be like right in the middle of the Xbox One or be a main part of it. Well, other insiders have said that it will be a separate part of the Xbox showcase. Yes, it will be part of the Xbox and Microsoft showcase, but it'll be at the end of it, so that way Bethesda can still have their own one, like their own giant showcase, but it's still technically part of the big Microsoft thing, even though it's its own sub showcase, if that makes sense. I hope I'm explaining that well, but Bethesda's going to have a lot of stuff here. I mean, they have Arcane, they have Alpha Dog Games, id Studios, Tango Gameworks, ZeniMax Online Studios, obviously Bethesda Game Studios. They have a lot of talented development studios. I mean, so many of them are legendary, and now Arcane might be dropping a new, unheard of, and unpredicted Omen vampire game at E3 as well. If we do end up seeing Omen at E3 before the Starfield showcase, then that definitely lends a lot more credibility to this inside leak from Point, and that would make me worried immediately for what Starfield might be, because I don't want endless procedural generation stuff like No Man's Sky. And to be honest, I don't want anything from No Man's Sky really in Starfield. I want Starfield to be Bethesda's own thing, and I want procedural generation to only be utilized the same way Bethesda Game Studios has been using it before, which is not for endless copy-paste algorithm planets that just look like strange, mutated, disinherited clones of one another or something. But either way, that's everything I wanted to talk about in today's video. Let me know what you think about this leak down in the comments below, and as always, if you enjoyed the content and if you're hyped for Starfield, be sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn notifications on. And as always, huge shout out and much appreciation to the following amazing people for going above and beyond to support the channel and bring you content like this. I will be updating this list with people who have supported the channel recently, so if you want to get your name added to this list permanently and get a permanent future video shout out in every single one of my future videos, you can support the channel over on Ko-fi, Patreon, or here on YouTube as an exclusive channel member. Links for all this and more are down in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to tune in next time. If Starfield is a huge procedural generation thing, my hype too will be procedurally generated, and that RNG may not roll in Bethesda's favor.
It just works.